Did you hear that the looksmaxxer Clavicular was brutally frame-mogged by an ASU frat boy? If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's okay.
We are here to explain how a man who goes by the name Clavicular has popularized this language and in the process become a big star on the internet.
But there's a darker side to him. A warning, in this episode we'll be discussing drug use, self-harm, and body dysmorphia.
Clavicular is a man who has gone to absolute extremes to meet his idea of what's beautiful, and he encourages his followers to do the same.
From the BBC, this is The Global Story. I'm Tristan Redman.
And I'm Asma Khalid. And today on our show, who is this Clavicular guy? And why has he become a symbol of our times?
My name's Matt Shea. I'm an investigative reporter and documentary filmmaker. I'm hosting the new BBC podcast Top Comment, which launches very soon. And I've spent a lot of my time investigating stories around the manosphere, internet culture, people like Andrew Tate.
Matt, it's so great to have you with us. We are here today to discuss all sorts of things that I have only just learnt about. The use of the word maxing, but other ones like gesturing, gestergooning, foids, munting. We're going to find out all about it today. Can you tell us, please, Matt, why does this story matter to people who are not terminally online?
So I think first we have to understand who Clavicular is, who's the person behind this kind of interesting new language that you referenced there. So he's a 20-year-old live streamer who is a looksmaxxer, which means he's someone who's dedicated to looking as good as physically possible given his genetics. And he basically does things like he smashes himself in the face with a hammer to make his bone structure appear more chiseled. And he's essentially taken this looksmaxxing world out of the shadows of incel forums online and into the mainstream.
When did you first become aware of this person and what was your reaction?
I've been following the Manosphere and its kind of adjacent niches for a while now. I wrote a book called Clown World, which is about Andrew Tate, essentially a viral misogynist influencer who is alleged to have trafficked women, to have raped women, allegations he denies, but he's being investigated for. And was sort of the most famous person to come out of this part of the internet called the Manosphere. And within the Manosphere, there's lots of different people. There's pickup artists. There's men going their own way, who are men who have kind of decided that they should no longer have any sort of meaningful relationship with women at all. But all of them share this attribute which they refer to as being red-pilled. And being red-pilled means that you've awoken to the notion that that feminism is a lie, essentially, and that men actually have fewer rights than women. Okay, so that's being red-pilled. Lookmaxing comes from a kind of darker, more nihilistic version of red-pilling called black-pilling. To be black-pilled is to not just have the realization that feminism is supposedly a lie, but it's to have this realization that your entire worth is genetically predetermined, and life is this kind of Darwinist nightclub where you're competing with other men for sex and for women's attention, and that if you are born kind of not good looking or with low musculature, then you're essentially doomed, and you will always be an incel, an involuntary celibate, someone who believes that they will never have sex with women because women will never find them attractive. Now, Clavicular's sort of post-incel, he's saying rather than accept your fate that women will never like you, you can, in his terminology, ascend. You can make yourself look better. You can looksmax.
I have a lot of questions to follow up on here, Matt. Why don't I just begin by asking if you can just pull up his Instagram and kind of describe what he looks like to us? Yeah.
He is rarely wearing a shirt. He has a very lean body, high muscle mass, chiseled jawline, kind of perfect hair. And he is mainly known for these live streaming videos, it seems, where he kind of is either brutally rating women's attractiveness or mogging other men.
Okay, what does it mean to mog?
So mogging comes from AMOG, alpha male of the group.
I feel like you're describing literally lexicon to me, Matt. Like I'm speaking a foreign language sometimes, but please continue.
Well, it's okay. So to mog someone is to portray yourself as superior to them, especially to another man. So Clavicular famously got brutally frame mogged by an ASU frat leader. So the meme that most people came to Clavicular through was a picture of him stood next to a fraternity leader who had a wider muscular frame than him.
Okay.
And the caption said that this frat leader brutally frame mogged Clavicular by having a wider frame.
And so to have a wider frame is presumably seen to be more attractive.
Yes, exactly. So you can attach any prefix to mog. So like you can face mog, you can frame mog. We were going to do Clavicular on top comment, but you could say that you news mogged us by doing it in this podcast.
Please don't take that personally. Okay, so Matt, you keep referring to this guy as Clavicular, but I feel like we should spell out that that's not actually his birth given name. It is a chosen name.
Clavicular was born Braden Peters. He grew up in Hoboken, New Jersey. He says that he struggled socially in high school and often caused himself an autist, despite no official autism diagnosis. At 14, he became obsessed with improving his looks, so he ordered a testosterone kit online. His parents initially threw the drugs away, causing a hormonal crash. At some point, he becomes a frequent poster on the forum looksmaxxing.org, starts kind of speaking in terms of these grievances about the unfair biological advantages held by tall and muscular men. Clavicular is a reference to the width of his clavicles.
Is this your clavicle here to here?
Yeah, it's your collarbone, essentially.
Interesting. So the width of your collarbone is seen to be a sign of attractiveness.
Yes. So all of this comes from the kind of incel looksmaxxing belief in hypergamy. It's a term that's used by biologists to describe how animals pick a mate. Now, they apply this to humans, and they believe that women seek higher status men in order to increase their kind of social and economic standing and the genetic potential of their offspring. And it's within this world of hypergamy that these genetic specificities like the width of your clavicles or, the ratio between the distance between your eyes and your nose and mouth are important. People like Clavicular are obsessed with this to the point of body dysmorphia. Clavicular says that he's been taking testosterone since he was 14 and is now infertile because of that.
I want to ask you about that though, because if the idea of looksmaxxing is to break out of your kind of your incel fate, so to speak, if the end result of looksmaxxing is, as is the case with this guy Clavicular, that you end up infertile, well, to what end?
So Clavicular has himself said that sex or slaymaxing, as he refers to it, is actually less important than the goal of mogging other men. So actually, by that, he means that the competition within the social hierarchy for other men is the main game.
Okay, so in fact, the end result is not to have sex, it's just to better other men. Is that right?
In the kind of caricatured extreme form that Clavicular represents, yes, looksmaxxing is not about, attracting a mate anymore. It's about the attention and the virality that it gets you within that social hierarchy on social media.
Matt, this is the part of our episode where we do a practical exercise. So one of our producers have shared with Asma and I a message that was posted on X, and we would like your help, please, in translating this message. Clavicular was mid-gestergooning when a group of foids came and spiked his cortisol levels. Is ignoring the foids while munting and mogging moids more useful than SMV chad fishing in the club? What does that mean?
Clavicular was mid-gestergooning, so gestergooning is, using humor to attract attention from women, as opposed to just your looks, which is something that he kind of looks down on. when a group of foids, female humanoids, derogatory, came and spiked his cortisol levels, stressed him out, is ignoring the foids, female humanoids, while munting and mogging moids. So while munting, insulting, and mogging, presenting yourself as superior to male humanoids, more useful than SMV Chad fishing. So SMV stands for sexual marketplace value. Chad fishing, presenting yourself as a superior alpha male, a Chad, in order to kind of attract women. So basically what he's saying here is, that sentence translated is, Clavicular was acting humorous when a group of women came over and stressed him out, is ignoring women while insulting and presenting yourself as superior to other men more useful in the sexual marketplace, right? Now that gives you a window into what looksmaxxing is about, into this world of hypergamy, about how to compete with other men for female attention, but also for other male attention. But I think the important thing about that sentence you just said is that it's that vocabulary that has allowed Clavicular to go viral. And we shouldn't look at that sentence and think that there's like a bunch of young people who are actually talking like that, right? It's in itself a joke. Like, to do that meme is kind of performatively participating in the discourse.
Well, I will say, I mean, look, we've been laughing at points during this interview and talking about this being part of an online discourse and meme culture. And yet it's not just existing in this online world. There was this clip of him hanging out in a club in Miami with other notable Manosphere figures like Andrew Tate or Nick Fuentes. My understanding is they were playing this song that glorifies Hitler. It's by the artist formerly known as Kanye West. What was happening there, and why did this clip blow up so widely?
So this was a kind of clout bomb of all the top manosphere and far-right influencers in one nightclub singing along to Heil Hitler. Essentially the most algorithmically primed gathering in history, because it's so offensive. Everyone in that group has such a huge following that it was guaranteed to like kind of blow up the internet, which it did, which made them all more famous to whatever end, that serves for each of them. And since then, Clavicular has sought to clarify that he's apolitical, that he doesn't care about any of this stuff, and that he's nihilistic, and it's all about mogging, not politics, is what he said.
I mean, it does seem absolutely extraordinary that people can be singing a song glorifying Hitler essentially just as a publicity stunt. Is that what was actually going on?
This is essentially the tried and tested formula of the manosphere and of the far right extreme political online world, which is say outlandish things, become famous, meet with other influencers who have also said outlandish things, cross-pollinate, make each other more famous, and then translate that into whatever grift you desire, whether that's selling a course to make money or whatever. But the key thing is that all of the things these people are saying and doing are algorithmically primed to be successful, to reach as many people as possible. Because if you engage with Clavicular or Andrew Tate or Nick Fuentes through criticizing them, you are still engaging with them, and the algorithm likes that, and it pushes it more. If you engage with them because you like it, same thing. But we basically live in a world right now where social media rewards and gives huge platforms to the most outlandish, offensive people.
We were just talking about Clavicular at this club with some other members of the Manosphere, people who are seen to be part of the far right. And I want to ask you about Clavicular's politics, because they seem less clear-cut to me.
Well, Clavicular, I think, would say that he only cares about mogging, not politics. So he is essentially apolitical and nihilistic. In December last year, Clavicular went on a podcast with the conservative political commentator Michael Knowles, where he was asked about who he might endorse in the 2028 presidential election between California Governor Gavin Newsom and Vice President J.D. Vance. Clavicular described Vice President J.D. Vance as, quote, subhuman for his, quote, recessed side profile and for being, quote, obese, asking, how are you fat and expected to lead a country? In saying that, he must be aware that that's funny, right? A lot of what he does is intentionally funny. I mean, this is a guy who uses the term second floor maxing to refer to just going upstairs, right? So he must be aware that what he's doing is kind of clowning in a way.
Is he truly not ideological in what you've seen from him?
I would say that he's genuinely nihilistic. But I think that is, in a way, more scary. The idea that your nihilism has reached such an extent that it isn't an issue for you to chant Heil Hitler in a nightclub while filmed and use the N-word, which he has done multiple times, for attention is very worrying. If like even a portion of his followers share that same nihilism, that is very worrying.
Does he use the N-word because he espouses a racist ideology, or quite simply just for attention?
Again, I would say that he probably would say that he isn't racist and is apolitical and just wants to focus on looksmaxxing. But that doesn't mean that he's unintentionally espousing a racist ideology. For example, Clavicular also appears on a podcast with the far-right commentator Nick Fuentes, and the two of them talk about the importance of, quote, saving European culture by taking steroids and looksmaxxing. Where Clavicular's kind of ideology, if you could call it that, crosses over into racism is in the same way that the kind of social Darwinism and hypergamy that surrounds the whole incel looksmax culture it combines with race science. And so he sort of says in his course, he offers consolation to, quote, ethnics who got the, quote, short end of the phenotype stick, and encourages them to follow his godly coloring routine.
So ethnics being anyone who's not white he's referring to, or who are ethnics?
I think you could safely assume that.
I see.
Clavicular said the concerns that the looksmaxxing subculture is racist are, quote, dumb. People would be right to be concerned when you look at the facts that he has said things around kind of evolutionary biology which refer to a kind of idealized male form and pose questions about, is that supposed idealized male form a Caucasian male form? And the fact that he is, doing a video in a nightclub with a famous white nationalist chanting Heil Hitler, whether there is a danger that this looksmaxxing world that we're now seeing has a lot of crossover with eugenics. And we know statistically that men around the world are more concerned with how they look physically than they have been at any point in recent history. Male body dysmorphia is on the rise. Instagram and social media play into that. Things like dating apps play into that hugely. The idea that, you're constantly swiping and no one's swiping back on you all contributes to this sense that you are competing in this sexual marketplace. And that is fundamental to incel and looksmaxxing culture. And that leads to people doing all sorts of extreme and crazy things. Looksmaxxing is one of them. However, I think we have to be careful not to overanalyze Clavicular. And I think there's a huge tendency when a living meme like Clavicular arises for the think pieces to come out. I saw New York Times compared looksmaxxing vocabulary to James Joyce's Ulysses. There's a tendency to say this thing is happening. What does this say about young men and, as a whole? I would be cautious to say that this is a trend affecting a majority or even a large number of young men. I think the reason he's famous isn't because loads of young men are smashing their faces with hammers to increase their chiseled bone structure look. They're sharing him because they find it funny and ridiculous.
Matt, we made an episode in January about a kind of gender chasm which is opening up in South Korea. Now, there's a political divide between men and women, which has been developing, partly driven by the internet in that country, but it's a phenomenon which has been happening elsewhere in the world. There's evidence that this process started around about the late noughties, the late 2000s, possibly around the time of the global financial crisis. Are we moving into a situation where men and women socially might become more and more segregated from each other? And if that happens, how serious could that damage be for society?
Until recently, women and men have voted along similar lines according to generation or other demographic factors like socioeconomic status. Now, especially amongst young people, there's more of a divide in terms of their gender. So women are voting more progressively and men the opposite. That gulf is mainly driven in the West by women voting more progressively and slightly by men voting more conservatively. However, we're already seeing those young men switching up. Donald Trump is losing support amongst young men in the US. But perhaps more important is how young men today perceive feminism and equality among the sexes. Young men are more likely than any other group in society to see feminism as a threat. There has always been people like Clavicular or Andrew Tate in the sense that there's always been pickup artists. What's different now is they've kind of metastasized into a political movement that not only wants to teach people how to have sex with women, but feels that it's owed that sex and feels that it was denied it by feminism. And that becomes very problematic. Now we're entering into territory where women are seen as the enemy. And then, these people like Clavicular and Andrew Tate come in to offer them the solution, which ends in misogyny.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. We really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this all.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. The Global Story is also a daily news podcast. You can get it on bbc.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Cheerio.